This week's Five Fact Friday is different because I'm away and I just wanted to do a bit of a brain dump about the state of the UK housing market right now for anyone trying to move house. You'll see if you go and look at the 5 facts that will be linked to below this video, or maybe you're watching this video on the page with the 5 facts, that at least 3 of them are about falling GDP, falling jobs, so joblessness is rising, and inflation going back up, which means there's no chance of rate cuts anytime soon. And it isn't in the 5 facts, but also 30-year borrowing costs for the government are now back up at the levels not seen since 1998. In a nutshell, this means that the UK economy is just bleeding out and there's no prospect of it. And most of you watching this, with a few exceptions, are probably either experiencing tightening financial conditions or very difficult financial conditions, or you know people in that situation. I mean, almost everyone I talk to is either experiencing that or knows people who are, and it's getting harder, not easier. So what does that mean for people moving house, or thinking about moving house, or deciding whether to move house or not, and worrying about the economy? And a lot of people get me wrong and think that I'm trying to put people off buying a house. I'm not. Exactly the opposite. I want everyone who wants to, I want to help everyone who wants to own a house. There's nothing nicer than owning the home you want to live in and stay in long term. The problem is that the industry that's out there selling you the debt to do this and selling you the houses is supported with this endless media narrative of everything's fine, prices only go up, record house prices, year-on-year growth, blah, 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 blah. But actually, if you look at anything other than the unverifiable average figures that we're given that cover up all of the stories of what's happening at local level, if you start to look more deeply, you can see that it's a very, very different picture. For example, just this morning, I put up on X a post using data, which is land registry data collated by Otter Property. Go and have a look yourself. Otter Property, that's OTTA property.co.uk/trends. And then go and look at detached houses in northwest London, and you'll see that the land registry data, the price paid data with no manipulation, shows that the average price of transactions has come down from 2.2 million to 1.3 million. It's about 37% down from the peak. Yes, it's an isolated example, but the point is nobody should think it's not possible. And the people affected by that, who perhaps bought at the peak in 2022, when I was saying, guys, this is the peak, it's coming down now, are now experiencing extreme loss or pain or an inability to sell. And what I'm trying to do is to warn people off getting into that situation, because if you buy a home and find yourself in that situation, you're going to end up wishing that you hadn't bought the home, or at least you hadn't overpaid for it, because now you need to sell and you can't, or your life savings are going to get swallowed up paying off the negative equity you find yourself in. And I suppose the simplest way to describe the warning I'm trying to put out there is always buy a home but don't overpay, because as that survey in The Independent last week showed, or was it 2 weeks ago now, something like 50% of first-time buyers end up regretting their purchase. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, hang on, Charlie, we've got no choice because everyone's overpaying and always overbidding, either you have to overpay or you don't get a house. That's not true. I have people contacting me now on an almost daily basis saying, thank you, Charlie, we have ended up buying. We learnt from your content about how to not overpay, and we've bought somewhere. We negotiated a price that we wouldn't have negotiated without you. We've saved tens of thousands of pounds. You just need to know how to go about the process of buying without being manipulated into overpaying. I have had text messages this morning from someone who had a private video call with me last week saying that they have been manipulated into paying £35,000 more than the lender's valuer of her mortgage company said the property was worth. And she is basically, and it's Connells, it's a Connells property being sold. They lied, they withheld one offer, they lied about another offer that didn't exist, and succeeded in getting this buyer, because they weren't taking an in-house Connells mortgage, to pay so much higher They thought she wouldn't pay it, so they thought they could sell it to their buyer who had taken a Connells mortgage. But the offer was so high, and by the way, the seller only got the offer because the buyer went round to see the seller in person and said, I'm offering this much. And the seller went, well, that's unbelievable, and we're going to take your offer. Much to Connell's annoyance, she's now realised that she's massively overpaying, but there's no other chance of her getting a home where she needs for her kids. And I've had messages saying, I don't know what to do. I know I'm overpaying. I'm paying 15% over what the lender's valued it at. But I don't know what to do. I can't lose this sale because the sale's been agreed at that price. And I said, you've either, and I know that person is massively overextending themselves and has borrowed money privately to fund the extra deposit necessary to pay the difference between the downvalued amount and the agreed amount. And I have said, look, do not proceed on that basis unless you're sure you're happy to end up in a house that you probably can't afford, won't have any money to pay any maintenance bills that come up, and you'll be overstretched. Are you sure? And this is what a lot of first-time buyers do. They get in this position where we don't know what choice they've got. And actually, in that situation, a lot of people will proceed, knowingly overpay, and then live to regret it for years. Now, in this particular situation, it's Connells behaving outrageously. If I was the seller, I would be refusing to pay their commission because they knowingly withheld offers. So what am I trying to say here? Like, it's a shitty game, and the odds are stacked against you if you're a first-time buyer, and you need to know how to go into this game and avoid the pitfalls and the traps. And the other point, the other major point I want to make is, when the housing market is stable, busy, and prices are climbing modestly, and the economy is stable and calm and not suffering and struggling, then the risks of overpaying in that environment are much lower. If you have to overstretch yourself in that environment, the risks are lower because job stability is good, employment is on the up, GDP is on the up, and if it's modest and stable growth, that's a fairly low risk environment in which to buy a house. You still shouldn't overpay, but that's not the environment we're in now. We're in an environment where employment numbers are plummeting at the fastest. I think it's now faster than in the 2008 global financial crisis. Unemployment, or the rate of jobs being lost in 2008, is not as high as the rate now. And if you go and watch Sasha Yanchin's most recent video where he breaks down the granularity of the jobs data, and he reveals complete manipulation by the ONS of the figures, even after they've manipulated it, that it still shows the fastest rate of job losses since 2008. So in other words, what that implies is that actually unemployment is rising even faster now than it did in 2008. Long-term borrowing rates are very high. These are all negative factors in terms of economic stability, and therefore they create a higher risk if you are overpaying for a home. Now, even if prices are coming down, people who've got stable jobs, stable incomes, a decent sized deposit, and aren't overstretching themselves and want to buy a home should always buy a home, even when the economy is looking bad. It's often nicer to actually live in a home that you own rather than be at the behest of a landlord, an unpredictable landlord who might be forced to sell their house suddenly. And I get it. Owning a home has nothing to do with the money, it's to do with the stability. And I would say you should still buy a home. And in fact, in this market, with more and more sellers coming on board, there's more and more choice for buyers. It might not feel like that if you're a first-time buyer and you're stretching your affordability, but generally speaking, we've got the best conditions that there have been for buying for over 10 years in terms of availability, choice, and your opportunity to negotiate. That's what I mean when I say now is the best time to buy, that it's been for a long time. It is not the best time to buy from the point of view of what happens financially after that, which is why whether or not you should buy now depends entirely on your personal circumstances. If you know you're going to be buying and keeping and staying this home for a very long time, then you can just ignore the economic downturn as long as you can afford the mortgage payments you're taking out and you don't plan to sell anytime soon, and you can enjoy the stability of a home. But if you've got any uncertainty over your job security, which direction your life is headed in the next few years, whether or not you might need to sell in a few years' time, then the risks are much higher than usual. And if I was on the side of the balance that said, well, my certainty of my life's future is low at the moment, I don't know what the future holds in the next few years, then I would be much less inclined to risk buying a home and taking on the uncertainties, which it does have. That yes, there are some certainties, but there are also uncertainties of buying a home. I would be much more cautious. If I had a stable place that I was renting, and the rent was affordable, I would keep on saving. I would keep on saving my money, putting my money away, increasing my deposit, and biding my time. If the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years of your life are less certain than you would like. You don't know what's going to happen with your job. You don't know what's going to happen with your industry. Now, some people might go, well, precisely because I'm worried about my job, I want to buy now while I can, while I've got a job and still get a mortgage. There is an argument to do that as well, if you're buying to hold long term. But this is the point, you see. The whole industry just says, always buy, house prices always go up, everything's fine, and that's provable bollocks. So, what am I trying to say? You really need to disregard all of the media hype and the lender hype and the Rightmove and the ONS going, it's up, record house prices. You just need to literally ignore that. And you need to look at your personal circumstances, how much they're going to be affected by the economy, which is at the moment just tanking, right? I know that the headlines the headlines aren't saying UK economy is tanking. But if you actually look beyond the headlines and look at the data, you will see all of the signals are strongly negative and getting worse. And for most people who don't have the knowledge or the experience to be able to figure that out for themselves, it's bewildering to hear people like me on YouTube going blah, 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 everything's disastrous, watch out. When actually, oh no, but the ONS says house prices are going up and the government says that they're creating new jobs, and you just don't listen to the headlines, positive or negative. Headlines exist to sell headlines, and that's it. They're not helpful. Anyway, I'm rambling. Check out the 5 facts. Ignore what other people are telling you to do. Ignore me. Hear what I'm saying. Disregard it if you want. Make your own decision based on your own circumstances. And if you're not sure, then I would say don't decide, right? If you have any doubts, don't proceed. Only proceed if you are sure that, number one, you've got a good price. In other words, you haven't paid more than your personal maximum comfortable amount for a particular property. And if you're sure that your circumstances are stable and unlikely to change in the next 10 years or so. So if you're confident about your purchase, absolutely proceed. But if you're not, and if you're worried, and if you're unsure, I would just, in that scenario, I would only be looking to buy if I could get what was obviously an absolute bargain. And to do that, you've got to be out viewing. That's all you can do. The only way to get a bargain is to invest the time out there viewing, learning the market, and so that you know when a bargain comes along and you can snap it up. Anyway, guys, I hope that was a helpful ramble and a helpful rant. I'm really worried about the number of people that I know are overpaying now, because over 50% of purchases are from first-time buyers, and over 50% of first-time buyers regret their purchase. So that means 1 in 4 purchases right now is going to be regretted. That's a lot of lives being avoidably disadvantaged in the coming years. And I'd love to help people avoid that, because there's nothing worse than losing your home. In terms of the housing market, in terms of the moving house context, there's nothing worse than losing a home you don't want to lose. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye, guys.